Hey truckers, hitting the road but tangled up in registration woes? Auto Tag of America in Arizona has got your back. Our crew lives for the nitty-gritty of IRP, IFTA, title, registration, and renewals, so you don't have to. Auto Tag of America understands the unique needs of truckers and trucking business. No matter if you're driving solo or managing a whole fleet, our experts whip up speedy, customized solutions that keep your wheels turning and business booming. With us handling the paperwork, your focus stays on the long haul ahead. Cut the red tape, dodge those costly standstills, and keep that revenue rolling in. Swing by or click online. It's trucking made simple. Time's money on the road, and we're here to save you both. This month, truckers save 25% on processing fees. So fuel up on savings at your go-to resource for IRP, IFTA, titles, registrations, and renewals at autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers. And remember, with Auto Tag of America, you're always in the driver's seat.
If you struggle to get in shape and lose weight, I'm about to change your life. I'm Carl, the CEO of Body, and I don't like working out and eating healthy either. So here's how I get myself to do it. I make myself own the morning. And by the morning, I mean the first hour or so of every day. It's not family time. It's not for scrolling social media. It's for my results and for my health. And man, does it work. Every day, I get out of bed, drink a health shake, and then I go crush a workout on the Body app and just follow along day by day. Before most people are even out of bed, I'm done for the day. So here's my special introductory offer to you. If you go to body.com to sign up, the next 5,000 new subscribers will get 72% off a full year of access to over 120 programs. Yeah, that's only 33 cents a day to start now and see how fast the pounds come off. And if they don't, you can get your money back, no questions asked. Just go to body.com to save 72% and get life-changing results. That's BODI.com.
You're in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
I was thinking here of playing the David Bowie song, Cha-Cha-Cha Changes, whatever. And since we don't have licensing and his heirs will come after us with a big lawsuit, I won't do that, but we get the picture. So the show might sound a tad different to you, maybe better, because you're getting better audio effect of this episode, and part of the reason is the network we've been on for 14 years, Genesis Communications Network, or GCN, has shuttered. They've closed down. And it's kind of sad news. It was a rather small network, and one of the problems here is that the radio business is changing considerably. So smaller networks have folded over the years. Another couple were Lifestyle Network, Business Talk Radio, that sort of thing. Since this happened, stations, networks have contacted us to continue to carry the Paracast. If you listen to the show through your favorite podcast app, it's going to be the same thing. You'll still get the show. We still offer the Paracast Plus, but there are differences. The audio quality is better. There will be fewer ads in the main show. On the other hand, the After the Paracast Premium Podcast, the bonus extra for Paracast Plus subscribers, will grow a little longer. So you'll still get more value in buying our premium service. If that makes sense to everybody, if you have a question, write me. If you have an insult to give it to Tim.
It's okay. I can take it.
I know you can. Kurt Konecny joins us. And Kurt, by the way, and I share something. You and I, Kurt, have written chapters for a book.
Yes, we have.
And this is something that Tim is going to have to give the announcement on. Why don't you say what you're working on before we introduce Kurt to our audience?
Sure. Well, we have been working on a book for most of last winter up until the spring of this year. And we've got some fabulous contributors such as Gene and Kurt and Sean Castile and Scott Corrales and others. And I'm proud to announce that we now have a title. That title is Weird Time, Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space. And hopefully it will be published probably in the next maybe a couple of weeks. I'll give it 2 to 3 weeks is when I'm looking at it finally being available. And we'll make that announcement when it is. But again, that title is Weird Time, Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space, with contributions by Gene Steinberg and our guest, Kurt Konecny.
Kurt Konecny, welcome to the Paracast.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. And again, my last name is a killer, so don't feel bad if you mispronounce it.
I understand you've got this skill there where you could reach your hands into the computer display. And if I fail to say Konecny correctly, your hand will come out of the screen and grab you by the neck. Is that correct, sir?
I wish I had that power. It would get me some sort of money, but it doesn't. I can't do that.
There was an episode, by the way, of the old Supergirl TV show on the CW where they actually had a scene where they did that, where this evil person put her hand through the monitor and grabbed the computer nerd, Jeremy Jordan, by the neck to try to strangle him. So I
can't do that, so you're safe.
Thank you. Of course, some other listeners might decide they'd rather do it. Kurt, I gather from your bio, you first got interested in the world of the unknown as a child, as many of us do.
Yes.
So what led you on this path?
What led me on this path, the house that I grew up in when I was young, I just had things happen there that didn't make sense to me because it was a newly built house. So it wasn't like an old house that an occupant died in or anything like that. But one of the biggest instances that started me down this path is one night I was laying in bed. I might have fallen asleep for a little while, and at one point I woke up and I tried to get back to bed, and I turned and I looked at my bedroom door, and there was a glowing green face looking back at me, peeking around the corner of the door. It's one of those things where, like the old rub my eyes. I'm like, am I seeing this? And I'm looking, and the thing is still looking at me, and it's starting to come out more around the doorway. And the only way I can ever describe this to people is that the face looked like a skull, and the body looked like, I'm dating myself here, but back when I was in middle school and high school, in biology class, we had these anatomy dummies that showed all the muscular structure and stuff like that. And that's what the body looked like. It was like tendons and muscles. And I freaked out. So I ducked like everybody does. I ducked my head back under the covers thinking that was going to make me safe. And after a minute or two, I pulled the covers down, and this thing was standing directly above the bed looking down at me and smiling. And I screamed like crazy. And my dad came running into the room, turned the lights on. There was nothing in there. And he laid down on the floor next to my bed and slept. But at one point, I looked back at the doorway, and even though my dad was sleeping there, this green face was looking around the corner of the door at me again. And that's probably one of the biggest things that happened at that house. And I think that was kind of what started this fascination with the unexplained.
When you saw this, did you consider waking up your dad and saying, "What is this?"
No, because I was freaked out. I went under the covers. I thought maybe I was imagining it until I pulled my head out from under the covers and I saw that it was now directly above the bed looking at me. That's when I screamed.
When you screamed, did your dad awaken?
Yeah, he was in the room next to mine, and he must have got up and came running in. But I had put my head back under the covers when I saw this thing, and then he flipped the lights on, and when I looked, he was in the room, but there was nothing else in there.
Now, obviously, some people may say some kind of lucid dream or something like that.
Yes.
But you believed it was more than that. Why?
Because other things happened in the house. My brother one day went down to the basement by himself to get his shoes that he left down there, and he came back up sobbing, saying that when he was downstairs, he saw Darth Vader. This is back when Star Wars was popular. And the only thing that him and I have talked about this since then, and the only thing that makes sense is it was like a big dark figure, but he came up just sobbing. Every night when I was in a different bedroom there, when I was a little older, every night at 10 after 11 at night, I would see a floating light come in the hallway and then turn and go into my brother's room, which was the old room I was in that I saw the green guy. So there was just there were a lot of things that happened at that house that freaked me out.
Well, now you've whet my appetite.
Yeah, I'm very much I'm a optimistic skeptic. Like I look for the answers and stuff, but I don't always want to find them. And people have suggested, a lucid dream, a sleep paralysis of some kind, but I just really don't think that was that.
see that green-faced figure again?
Nope, that was the one and only time. Another thing was I was in my bedroom, not that one, but the other bedroom I moved to when I was older. And I was in there with a buddy of mine that lived through the yard. And we had the old tape cassette. And we were just recording us being, young jackasses, basically, like talking to each other. And at one point, we listened to it back. And at one point, our voices faded away. And you heard a voice on there say, "Get out." And then our voices came back. And this was years before EVP was a thing. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s.
And of course, longtime listeners of the Paracast know full well that we have featured episodes that had EVP recordings. So just check out our archives. We've got more strange noises with Kurt, Gene, and Tim. You're in
the Paracast.
Hey truckers, hitting the road but tangled up in registration woes? Auto Tag of America in Arizona has got your back. Our crew lives for the nitty-gritty of IRP, IFTA, title, registration, and renewals, so you don't have to. Auto Tag of America understands the unique needs of truckers and trucking business. No matter if you're driving solo or managing a whole fleet, our experts whip up speedy, customized solutions that keep your wheels turning and business booming. With us handling the paperwork, your focus stays on the long haul ahead. Cut the red tape, dodge those costly standstills, and keep that revenue rolling in. Swing by or click online. It's trucking made simple. Time's money on the road, and we're here to save you both. This month, truckers save 25% on processing fees. So fuel up on savings at your go-to resource for IRP, IFTA, titles, registrations, and renewals at autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers. And remember, with Auto Tag of America, you're always in the driver's seat.
At LASIK Plus, we know LASIK is a big decision, and every one of our patients is unique. That's why we customize your LASIK journey to you.
I only have a certain budget.
No problem. Right now at LASIK Plus, get $1,000 off LASIK when treated in May. That's $500 off per eye, plus guaranteed financing options. So visit mylasicoffer.com today to start your journey towards 20/20 vision. Must mention this promotion and be treated in May of 2024 to qualify. $1,000 off standard price of wave light procedure. $500 off for one eye. Cannot be combined with any other offers. Go to mylasicoffer.com for details.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
our guest, Kurt Konecny, joining us, and he says he will punish me if I get his name wrong. So I'm doing my level best. Okay, so you have a friend over for the evening and you're playing around with a tape cassette. This reminds me of something I did in my teen years, where I'd hang out at my best friend's home in the evening, and we both had tape recorders, and we would both record wild nonsense, but we didn't have EVP voices. Do you still have the tape, by the way?
No, I don't have any of those tapes. I wish I did. I mean, when I played it back and we heard that, my friend and I were looking at each other like, what? And we made the assumption that what happened was the tape got crinkled in there somehow and it distorted it, so we were always looking for explanations for stuff. But it was stuff like that got me really fascinated with this stuff. And it got to the point where when I was in fourth grade, the teachers, the principal actually had my parents, myself, and a psychologist come in to have a talk because they said I was obsessed with monsters.
Well, I was obsessed with monsters in the fourth grade. Not that I was a monster myself. So I think they thought I was a little bit weird also. But a lot of kids, watch monster films and everything. And of course, back many years ago, we had the famous Monsters of Filmland magazine that catered to the teenage crowd, not so much the preteens. But what was your obsession with monsters? What did they say about it?
They thought there's a lot of family stuff going on at that time, and they thought that maybe that was my way of dealing with family stuff that was going on at the time. But it was just that I was fascinated with monsters because I went down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what was going on in my house. And it led me to the public library to look up books on ghosts and monsters. And I just became really, really fascinated with it. And like when I would have homework assignments in fourth grade, I would somehow try to incorporate monsters into it because that's kind of what I knew the most about at the time. So after the first meeting, I think they were kind of like, no, he's okay. He just really likes monsters.
Did you actually watch the monster films on TV and in the movies?
Some of them, yeah. I was a weird kid. I was way more classy than I am now. Like when I was that age, I was really, really into old black and white movies like the Bowery Boys kind of movies or Abbott and Costello. So of course I would see Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, the Bowery Boys and the Haunted House. So I watched a lot of that stuff. And whenever there was an old classic monster movie on, I would watch it.
Well, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, I think, is a classic comedy monster movie because it featured so many people connected with monsters. It was like the second appearance of Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula. Glenn Strange, by the way, was the one who played the Frankenstein monster. And I think he played the bartender in Gunsmoke. And then Lon Chaney Jr. played the Wolf Man. And at the end, we had this cameo from
the Invisible Man. It was the Invisible Man, right?
We had Vincent Price as the Invisible Man. Yes. So with all that, having all those monsters in one picture and having people other than the Frankenstein monster, of course, that you connected with the classic monster films was really, really good. I thought it was really well done. I like the end of it where they're in this boat. And this is where the Invisible Man comes in, and you see this cigarette floating in the air, and Vincent Price is lamenting how he missed the fun. And he introduces himself, I'm the Invisible Man, and Abbott and Costello jump out of the boat into the river.
Yep. Yeah, I thought those were great movies. Like I didn't see a ton of the actual monster movies, but I saw a lot of those comedic monster movies.
Well, the nice thing I think about the 1930s and 40s monster movies is that they presented suspense, not outright horror. So when Count Dracula drank blood, it wasn't like the Hammer movie films of the 50s and 60s where you just saw blood leaking everywhere. It wasn't slasher films where it's blood and gore. It was suggested, but you never really saw it. Instead, they focus on the artistry of the films. It was too easy to get a shocking scene, but actually creating an atmosphere where people would sense the terror, I thought was something that we lost.
Yeah, the suggestion of the horror is worse than any of the graphic depictions of it, I always thought.
Well, in the scenes of the original Dracula, which I thought was a very slow-moving picture because part of it was based on a stage play. But you never saw Count Dracula actually bite someone's neck. You saw something very close to it. the hint of what he would be doing. And that was sufficient to get the message across.
Yeah, those are great movies. I love them. And like I said, I was watching them at a young age. And as I got older, I kind of got away from that. But this was in the era of, and in the late 70s, it was In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. I would watch religiously, and then it became Unsolved Mysteries and Sightings and those kinds of shows that I watched as I got older.
Did you continue to have experiences?
No. We moved out of that house, and nothing else really happened. As far as that goes, not until, and then with the fascination, and then when the glut of ghost hunting shows came out, when Taps came out with Ghost Hunters, I would watch it and I'm like, I want to do this. This is amazing. And I ended up joining a local group, a ghost hunting group, and that kind of brought on the second stage of my fascination with the paranormal.
Just out of curiosity, you don't have to tell us what you did. What was your day job?
Back in high school?
No, when you grew up. When you grew up and sought your fortune, what was your day job?
Well, when I was older, I worked at a grocery store for a long time. And then I ended up working in an office of a factory. And I think it was when I was in the office of the factory that I joined the ghost hunting group.
Something you would do the weekend, for example.
Yes, yeah. I did go to college. I graduated with a degree in English, and it was always my desire to become a college English professor. But I was dumb, and I thought something would just fall into my lap, and it turns out life doesn't really work that way.
So what did you end up doing?
Ended up mostly factories. I worked in a factory office, and then I ended up going and working on a factory floor on a machine for 10, 15 years. And then when COVID happened, I ended up going and working at a middle school here as a paraprofessional, as a teacher's aide, which was amazing. Like, wow. Like, I can't tell you enough how much I loved doing that. Okay.
Kurt's history being relayed to us. But this is nearly the beginning here. We've got much, much more. Did I say much more? To talk about with Kurt Konecny. And I got his name right again. He'll also join us for the After the Paracast podcast. And with our new format and setup, that means a longer show than ever, a longer bonus show than ever. If you want to know more about signing up, check out theparacast.plus, theparacast.plus for the quickest sign up ever. With Gene and Tim and Kurt, you're in
The Paracast.
Hey truckers, hitting the road but tangled up in registration woes? Auto Tag of America in Arizona has got your back. Our crew lives for the nitty-gritty of IRP, IFTA, title, registration, and renewals, so you don't have to. Auto Tag of America understands the unique needs of truckers and trucking business. No matter if you're driving solo or managing a whole fleet, our experts whip up speedy, customized solutions that keep your wheels turning and business booming. With us handling the paperwork, your focus stays on the long haul ahead. Cut the red tape, dodge those costly standstills, and keep that revenue rolling in. Swing by or click online. It's trucking made simple. Time's money on the road, and we're here to save you both. This month, truckers save 25% on processing fees. So fuel up on savings at your go-to resource for IRP, IFTA, titles, registrations, and renewals at autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers. And remember, with Auto Tag of America, you're always in the driver's seat.
At LASIK Plus, we know LASIK is a big decision, and every one of our patients is unique. That's why we customize your LASIK journey to you.
I'm so busy right now.
We offer a mix of convenient days and times, including 30-minute virtual appointments to fit your schedule.
I would love it, but I have astigmatism.
We treat thousands of patients with astigmatism every month with great outcomes. LASIK Plus is making your journey towards 20/20 vision all about you. So visit mylasicoffer.com today to start your LASIK journey.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
So, Kurt, after COVID hit, you went to work as a teacher's aide. Now, with an English degree, you could have become a full-blown teacher, right?
If I would have went on to do that, yeah. You know, like the students even know this story because I tell them this. My friend Angela was the head of the reading department at school. And when I lost my job because of COVID, she called me and she's like, Kurt, she's like, come be a reading aide at the middle school. And I told her, I said, I absolutely hate kids, and I especially hate kids that age. But I ended up going there because I needed a job. And after like the first week, I was like, oh my God, like I love these kids. I love them more than the adults there. I always say that the grocery store job I had was the best job I've ever had because that was me growing up, you know, going from being a young teen to an adult. But the most meaningful job I ever had were the 3 years I spent at the middle school. And I ended up leaving there. I mean, the pay I was not making enough to get by. So I quit there. And as of right now, I do not have a job. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, which by the time you're 53 years old, like I am, you should have an idea of what you want to be when you grow up. But I am stuck in a point where I'm not exactly sure what that is.
Well, look at it this way. I'm somewhat older than you, way older than you, and I haven't figured out what I want to do for a living yet. So here I am. This is what I do. Tim, you had some questions.
It's criminal, really, what they pay teachers in the United States and what they expect from that so little pay. I mean, I have a number of family members who are teachers and friends as well, and they say that they love the job, but the pay is just abysmal.
It's horrible. It really is. And I feel like COVID, like the whole COVID situation, I feel like so many of these kids have the deck stacked against them now as it is, and not having this proper support to help them just breaks my heart.
I will give you this conspiracy theory, but drop it after that. I don't want to get into the politics. The theory being that some people in government want to move all education into private schools so they can make profit from it. And therefore, you shortchange the public school system by paying starving wages. I mean, how many teachers have to work 2-3 jobs to be able to survive? That wasn't that way when I was a kid, but, you know, things have changed now. They pay these wages that are hardly above what you get working at a fast food store. And these people have 1 degree, multiple degrees, doctorates. They don't get paid what they deserve. And some of that, at least, is to move them into private schools and decimate the public school system. Now, I went through the public school system. I'm not that bad. My wife did. My first wife did. My entire family, including someone who became a member of Big Pharma, went for public schools. It is criminal. But I hope, obviously, you're going to land soon with the right gig. In the meantime, let's take you on your paranormal journey. So you become a member of this organization?
Yes, I joined a ghost hunting group in the area, and we went on a couple investigations. And I remember the first investigation being just so excited, and it was fun. Our second investigation, there is a property near here in St. Nazianz, Wisconsin, called JFK Prep. It was a seminary school that converted to a high school. And we've always said it's like a paranormal researcher's dream. It's got a church, it's got a school, it has dorm rooms, it has a cemetery, it has woods, it has everything. It's just amazing. It's a beautiful place for like everybody. around the area wanted to investigate there. And we just happened to get lucky enough that we got to be friends with the owner, and he let us come in with a couple other groups and do an actual investigation there. And that was the second investigation we ever did. And we always say we wish we could go back, having done more of them and knowing more now. But at the time, it was amazing.
Why don't you tell us about the process that you go through? Use this place as an example of how an investigation takes place.
For this one, I did the research. I'm a research guy. I like doing the research on the places and the legends around the places. And I spent a lot of days at the library putting together a booklet of the research. And there was some really fascinating stuff that happened there that people didn't know about. And what I think is funny is now when you do searches on JFK Prep, a lot of stuff that shows up is stuff that directly came from my research, which is kind of weird to me. But I did the research, and then we all went out there one night. Like I said, there were like 3 different groups because it's a huge property. So we had walkie-talkies, and we had blocks scheduled out where it's like Team A will be at the school at this time while Team B is at the church and Team C is in the tunnels underneath the property. So we would do that, and we would try to get, this was back when it was there wasn't a lot of tech. It was basically digital cameras, like when digital recorders just came out and they didn't sound the best. That's what we had. And a couple like video cameras, and that was really it. So we went there, we did our investigations. Investigations were done. We spent a week or 2 going through our evidence. I'm an audio guy. Like, I love EVP. I love trying to catch EVP. So because of all my different recorders, I had at least 22 hours of audio to go through. And I went through all of it, and we found some decent EVPs and went back out, met with the owner, and told him what we found. And he was fascinated. He wanted to actually open the place to public tours, like paranormal tours, but he ended up leaving shortly after. So that didn't pan out.
Those EVPs, how clear were the voices on them?
Some of them were pretty clear. I wish I would have brought some. Maybe next time if I come on again, I'll bring some. But they were pretty amazing.
Is this something that's posted anywhere?
I don't think so. We did it. We played them in, I think, at least 1 or 2 episodes of our podcast, because we did an episode of our podcast about EVPs, and we did a 2-part episode about JFK Prep and St. Nazianz, because the entire history of St. Nazianz is really interesting. So they're played on that episode, the St. Nazianz episode of the Strange Sessions.
We'll ask you about the show going forward. But did you have any more experiences you want to tell us about first?
The ghost hunting stayed pretty constant, and then the weird stuff started to happen in my old apartment.
Oh, yeah, that's what we definitely want to talk about.
Okay, this is going to be a little lengthy going into some of the stuff that happened here because it was pretty crazy.
Well, go for it, man.
All right, so I moved into a different apartment complex back in 2009. And I lived in a first floor apartment for, I think, like a year. And then I ended up dating a girl that moved up here from Texas. And I had a cat and she had 3 cats. So we decided to move to a different room, a different apartment in that complex. One that had 2 bedrooms, so we could make one an office/cat haven. So she moved up here from Texas, and then we moved into that new apartment. And this was June of 2006. And then, we were cleaning, we were getting settled into the new apartment. And after a week or 2, Natalie, who was my girlfriend at the time, said, "Why do you have so many Legos?" And I said, "I don't have any Legos." And it turned out he was picking up Legos every day off the floor. And I'm like, I just anywhere. And then the next day after she told me that, we found a Lego on the floor. So picked it up, threw it in the garbage can that was completely cat proof. And then the next day, another Lego showed up. And at this point, I was thinking a previous tenant had children. And maybe they had Legos hidden somewhere. So I searched everywhere. I climbed up on top of the kitchen counters to look on top of the cupboards, and there weren't Legos anywhere, but they kept showing up. And it becomes like a recurring theme in this apartment.
Before we get to more recurring themes, we've got a break. This recurring theme with Kurt, Gene, Tim, you're in.
The Paracast.
Do you find dealing with your trucking fleet's title, registrations, IRP, IFTA, and licensing tedious and costly? Luckily for you, our team at Auto Tag of America in Arizona thrives on them. At Auto Tag of America, we specialize in rapid and hassle-free fleet IRP and IFTA services and offer tailored solutions. Whether you manage a large fleet or are an independent owner or operator, our seasoned specialists are here to help alleviate the complexities of IRP and IFTA transactions. We excel at managing these intricacies, so you can focus on what you do best. Remember, time saved is money earned. And with Auto Tag of America, you can say goodbye to lost revenue days due to registration hiccups and ensure smooth sailing for your fleet's operations. At Auto Tag of America, you can walk in or use our user-friendly online processing to suit your convenience. This month, save 25% off processing fees by going to autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fry's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Fry's worth it every time. Fry's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This is Jennifer Stein, executive producer of The Disclosure Dialogues. You're listening to The Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
The first thing that occurred to me when you said this, Legos? Say what?
Yeah, I don't get it. It's just weird. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, unless there was a stash of them hidden somewhere in the apartment that the cats found that we could not find. But after we moved in for a week, or after that first month, they started not showing up quite as often, and then it kind of stopped at that point. But then days after it stopped, her and I were in the bedroom, laying in bed. We had the door closed because we didn't want the cats coming in there when we were getting ready for bed. And then we just kept hearing scratching on the door, and the cats hadn't done it up to that point. So we were thinking it was just the cat scratching on the door. And the next morning when we got up, we looked at the door and we found like scribblings from a green crayon all over the door. And Natalie asked me, she goes, "Was that here when we moved in?" And I told her I didn't think it was, but I could have been wrong because I didn't really examine the door. But there was green scribbling all over the door.
What did the scribbling say?
Nothing. It was just like a scribble, like a kid took a crayon and just went nuts on the door.
It was the cats.
It probably was the cats. I'm
they got a hold of a crayon,
Well, I'm guessing the crayon had been there on the door. It's just I don't remember seeing it. She doesn't remember seeing it. And then after this happened, she came into the bedroom one night and woke me up because she said she was taking a shower and she heard voices in the bathroom. And we went in the bathroom and there's like nothing. And I told her, I said, to be completely honest with you, I said, the apartment feels weird to me sometimes at night. And she said sometimes it feels weird to her at night. And she noticed that the cats sometimes seem spooked by something at night. She was more of a night owl. I was in bed early, but she said at night she noticed that the cats were kind of freaked out. And I told her that. I said, I don't think the apartment's haunted, but there's something weird going on. Then, like shortly after that, Natalie ended up falling asleep in the living room. She slept on the couch. And the next morning, she told me, she said it was the weirdest thing last night. She said she swore she heard what sounded like a little kid giggling in the living room. And then I kind of poo-pooed her and laughed it off. And I said, I'm a ghost hunter. I said, if there was a ghost in this apartment, I would know. And she got kind of mad at me when I shot her down. But I told her, I said, I don't think there's anything going on in this apartment. And then a while after that, she had a cold and was snoring like crazy at night. So I went out and slept on the couch in the living room. In the middle of the night, I woke up, I rolled over, and clear as day, I heard the sound of a kid giggling like he was standing right next to the couch. It went on for a couple seconds and then trailed off. And I was wide awake. It wasn't any kind of lucid dream. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It was just clearly a kid giggling, but it wasn't like creepy horror movie giggling. It was just like a happy kid giggling.
Looking for its Legos.
Yeah, I'm assuming it was happy because it had Legos. And then
no, you threw them away.
Yeah, well, something comes up with that too in the near future here. But not long after that, I was in the living room and Natalie had been taking a shower and she called me to come into the bathroom. So I walked into the bathroom and she pointed to the mirror, and the mirror had fogged over from her taking a hot shower, but you could see what looked like a kid's handprints going up and down the mirror. And we both put our hands next to the handprints, and they were way smaller than either of ours. And again, this is where I'm rationalizing it, trying to say there probably were kids in that apartment before we were there, and maybe they had the mirror all smeared up, and we just didn't clean it good enough, and it showed up because of the fog. But it was like some kid was in there when she was taking a shower, putting his hands in the steam on the mirror.
That had to be kind of jarring.
It was. And what really annoys me is I took pictures of it, and I've been searching for those pictures and I cannot find them anywhere, and it drives me crazy. And then like shortly after that happened, there was one Sunday evening where I was in the kitchen making supper. Natalie was in the shower again. I was making supper, and there's or dinner in Wisconsin. It's kind of supper, but it's dinner for other people. There's a bar type counter that goes out, looks out into the living room, and I was facing away from it at the stove. And while I'm looking at the stove, I saw what was clearly the shadow of somebody walking through the living room. So I assumed Natalie had got out of the shower and was walking across the living room. So I turned to say something to her. Nobody there. It turns out she's still in the shower, but there was just a crystal clear shadow on the wall of something walking through the living room. And then after this, it was quiet in the apartment for a year or two. Like nothing happened.
And then?
And then?
And then after about a year and a half, 2 years, I don't remember exactly, Natalie came and woke me up one night because she was taking a shower. You're going to notice that a lot of stuff seems to happen around the bathroom. And she was taking a shower, and she said she heard a loud thump against the door and the sound of the doorknob jiggling. And she thought it was me having to go to the bathroom, so she yelled, "Come in," and I never came in. So she got out and came. I was in bed sleeping. And we said it was probably the cats fighting, wrestling, and they hit the door, but I don't know if that would jiggle the doorknob. And then one night after this, Natalie was in the kitchen doing something or other by the refrigerator, and I was in the living room sitting on a recliner, and I was using my laptop. She was probably about 10 feet away from me in the kitchen, and I was on the recliner. And I asked her, I'm like, "What song are you singing?" And she said she wasn't singing a song. She thought what she heard was me listening to EVPs on my computer. So we realized that somewhere between the two of us, there was the weird sound that sounded like a kid singing a song.
But you couldn't tell what the song was.
No, I didn't know what the song was. It was like a murmuring. Like I thought she was singing something kind of under her breath, but it was obviously a song. And she thought I was listening to some weird EVPs or something, but it was a song. I don't know what the song was. And shortly after this, one night, a lot of this stuff happened around February. It was like so much of this stuff centered around the month of February. This is when it would amp up. And then after February was gone, it would kind of die down. And one of these February nights, I was laying in bed sleeping. Natalie was in the living room on the computer. I had the window cracked open a little bit because I like a cold bedroom. And at one point, I very clearly heard the sound of a child next to the bed just say the word "cold," like in a sad voice, like he was really cold. So I shut the window. And then a few days after that, we were in the bedroom and we saw Lego laying on the floor again. And we're like, "Are you serious?" They're like, we hadn't had a Lego for so long. And now, all of a sudden, there's a Lego on the floor again. So I set the Lego on top of the dresser. We shut the door. None of us were in the bedroom during the day. When we went back in the bedroom at night, the Lego was on the floor again, and we have no idea how it moved from the dresser it was on. And after that, another year or so of not much happening.
I know if I had that happening in an apartment, I would have that moving truck up real fast and I'd be going elsewhere. Were you ever tempted to do that?
No, nothing that happened had felt bad. I mean, it felt like we were living with a couple of happy ghost kids. So there was nothing at all yet at this point that was frightening. But everybody asks me if I tried to get EVPs in my apartment, and I said no. I just couldn't. I mean, I love EVPs. I love listening to other EVPs. I love getting EVPs. I just don't like getting them where I live because that creeps me out.
What do you think EVPs are then?
I don't know. I mean, we've caught enough of them that there's something there. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it works. You know, it doesn't make sense to me. Why can't I hear this, but the machine picks it up? Like, I don't know what it is. I really don't, but I know it's something.
We've got lots more of something coming up with Kurt. More of the strange things that happened to him and the fate of that apartment. And I just wonder about the fate of that relationship under these circumstances. More to come with Kurt and with Gene and with Tim. You're in
the Paracast.
Do you find dealing with your trucking fleet's title, registrations, IRP, IFTA, and licensing tedious and costly? Luckily for you, our team at Auto Tag of America in Arizona thrives on them. At Auto Tag of America, we specialize in rapid and hassle-free fleet IRP and IFTA services and offer tailored solutions. Whether you manage a large fleet or are an independent owner or operator, our seasoned specialists are here to help alleviate the complexities of IRP and IFTA transactions. We excel at managing these intricacies so you can focus on what you do best. Remember, time saved is money earned. And with Auto Tag of America, you can say goodbye to lost revenue days due to registration hiccups and ensure smooth sailing for your fleet's operations. At Auto Tag of America, you can walk in or use our user-friendly online processing to suit your convenience. This month, save 25% off processing fees by going to autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fry's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Fry's worth it every time. Fry's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This is Kurt Sotheby, author of UFO Mysteries, and you're listening to the Paracast.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is Tim Swartz in EVP mode.
No, if it was EVP mode, it would be more like...
That was a really good EVP.
He is an EVP, don't you know that? That all over the world, when they hear EVPs, it's really Tim Swartz projecting his magical powers upon the rest of the world.
Magical.
But tell us more about this apartment. Now, again, this is not an old building.
No.
How big is the apartment?
It wasn't a big apartment at all. It was an upstairs apartment. The patio looked out over the woods. It was really peaceful, but it wasn't a big apartment.
This is a small town.
This is a very small town. This was the town of Two Rivers. I live in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and Two Rivers is the next over town, and it's very tiny. But it's on the road that goes along Lake Michigan. It's like a beautiful stretch of road. You know, it's a beautiful place for the apartment. they were nice apartments. They weren't huge.
And they weren't old, but yours
No.
was haunted. Did you ever talk to your neighbors about whether they had strange things happening to them?
No, I did not. I wasn't really close with any of the neighbors, and I didn't want to be like, "Hey, do you happen to find Legos Legos in your apartment?" when nobody has Legos. Like I didn't want to sound like the apartment complex kook.
Well, then they might have said, you could possibly enjoy living elsewhere.
Yeah. Yep.
Did anything frightening occur? Because it sounds like
Yes.
these experiences. Oh, okay. We're getting
to the culmination of this whole thing here. So, and keep in mind that this sounds like a lot, but this was in the span of time from 2006 to 2015. So this was a long stretch. There were stretches of years where nothing happened other than us hearing a couple weird sounds or finding something in a different place than we left it. And that was like once every couple months. So it was on almost like a cyclical pattern, but February's is when stuff seemed to happen. So one of the next following Februarys, Natalie ended up going to California for her birthday because her birthday was in February. Second day she was gone, I walked into the bedroom and there on the floor was a Lego. We hadn't had Legos again for a while. So I got kind of mad and I threw the Lego in a drawer in the dresser and shut it and just went about my day. And that night I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of a child sobbing. And I woke up, I got out of bed, I took the Lego out, and I put it on the fan that I had at the end of the bed, and the sobbing stopped. It was gone. So shortly after that, Natalie and I broke up. It was a very friendly, mutual breakup. She moved down to Chicago. I stayed in the apartment. Not much really happened after she moved. She took the cats with her, and one of our cats that we both dearly loved died. And I saw him twice in the apartment after he died. But that's like the only thing that happened for like the span of a year or two in that apartment after Natalie moved out. And then at this time, I was working at a factory that made piston rings. And one of the nights when I was working, I got home at 11 o'clock and I took a shower. And I'm taking a shower and all of a sudden I'm like, why does my arm feel so hot? And I looked and I had 3 scratch marks down my arm that had just started bleeding. And I was like, that's weird. That never happened before. But I chalked it up to me working in a factory and handling metal, that there could have been metal slivers on me. And when I went with the washcloth, I ended up cutting myself with the metal slivers. But I was just kind of surprised because that never happened. And I've been working at the factory for quite a while at that point. And a couple nights later, I'm taking a shower and all of a sudden my leg starts burning. And I look down and I have 3 long scratch marks on my leg that's just started bleeding. And I'm like, okay, something weird is going on here now. And this happened a couple more times in the span of a month.
And then
this is where it all culminated. I have told my 6th graders when I was working with the 6th graders I've told them this story. And one of my very good friends, Carly, listens to the podcast. And she says ever since she listened to this episode, she has a hard time getting up at night to go to the bathroom anymore because it creeped her out so much. But what happened, this was the final thing that happened. What happened was it was late afternoon. It was like 5:30 or 6 o'clock. I was sitting in the recliner and I was watching, I think, Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy or something like that. It wasn't even late at night. It was like 5:30 in the afternoon. So I'm watching TV, and where my recliner is positioned directly behind me is the bathroom door, the bedroom door, the closet. It's a little hallway, and that's where a lot of stuff seemed to happen when it was happening in the apartment. So I'm sitting in the recliner and I hear a sound behind me, like something behind me made a sound. So I turned my head sideways. So I was looking out of my peripheral vision at that hallway. And this is where I wish I could paint or draw or had some sort of artistic talent, because I can see this in my head of what it looked like, but I can't describe it good enough. But out of the corner of from the bathroom, I saw an old man crawl out of the bathroom, like edged his way around the door frame into the hallway. He had a blue and black checkered flannel shirt on, and he was crawling, but he was on the tips of his fingers and on his tips of his toes. He crawled around the corner, and his back was arched at a weird angle, like it had been broke or something. I didn't see his face. He was looking down, and he had white, stringy, drippy hair. And I saw him crawl out and edge around the corner of the door frame into the hallway and then disappeared. And when I tell people this story, they're like, I would have run out of your building in a second. And I said, no. I said, it's one of those situations where you're just like stunned. You're like, did I just really see that? And needless to say, that ended up being kind of a sleepless night. Like, I was pretty freaked out. And the next morning, I went into Two Rivers to the thrift shop and I bought a big cross and I hung it up in that bathroom, and nothing happened after that. And then maybe a year after that, I ended up moving to this apartment I'm in now, where absolutely nothing has happened.
Are you living in the same town as before?
I'm in Manitowoc now, but I'm literally like maybe a mile away from the old building.
How big are these towns we're talking about? A few thousand people, less?
Manitowoc is pretty big. Manitowoc is 32,000. Two Rivers is a smaller town.
Okay. When I think of small town Wisconsin, I think of a place called Amherst. I don't know how far that is from you. Amherst is a town of less than 1,000 people. It was the home of one of the classic figures in the early UFO paranormal field, guy named Ray Palmer. Don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yes. Yep.
You did? Okay.
Yes.
So how far is Amherst from you?
It's a little bit of a distance. I'm not exactly sure. Is Amherst in the middle of the state? Let me look here.
We are now going to have the sound of map searching as Kurt Konecny goes around. See, I said his name properly.
You got it right. It's less than 2 hours. It's an hour and 45 minutes away from Manitowoc.
Okay. We had fun going there. This was like 1965. And it was from Chicago, mostly 2-lane highways. We got lost going there, and finally we found Amherst, came up to a service station, probably the only service station in the town, and asked, well, where's Ray Palmer's home? And he knew. That's when we realized this is not just small town America, it is small town America, if you get my drift.
Yes. No, Manitowoc is bigger than that. Manitowoc is famous basically ever since the whole Making a Murderer documentary about Stephen Avery came out, because that's where I live.
Oh, okay. We're not going to get into that unless all that generates ghostly phenomena. But we want to get more into that, and also what led you to do the impossible and become a crazy person like me and Tim and start a show about all these subjects. We have Kurt Konecny, and I keep doing this very carefully because I do not wish to insult him and bring upon the ghosts. With Gene and Tim, you're in
the Paracast.
Do you find dealing with your trucking fleet's title, registrations, IRP, IFTA, and licensing tedious and costly? Luckily for you, our team at Auto Tag of America in Arizona thrives on them. At Auto Tag of America, we specialize in rapid and hassle-free fleet IRP and IFTA services and offer tailored solutions. Whether you manage a large fleet or are an independent owner or operator, our seasoned specialists are here to help alleviate the complexities of IRP and IFTA transactions. We excel at managing these intricacies so you can focus on what you do best. Remember, time saved is money earned. And with Auto Tag of America, you can say goodbye to lost revenue days due to registration hiccups and ensure smooth sailing for your fleet's operations. At Auto Tag of America, you can walk in or use our user-friendly online processing to suit your convenience. This month, save 25% off processing fees by going to autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fry's. where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Fry's worth it every time. Fry's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Again, as listeners might know, we're no longer on the GCN network because there is no GCN network. You're still hearing the same show, better audio, fewer ads, all that sort of thing. And of course, if you're interested, we offer probably the end of the story in terms of the show, where we continue into the After the Paracast bonus podcast, part of the Paracast Plus. Now longer episodes. Go to the Paracast.plus for quick sign up. Kurt Konecny is telling us about his paranormal encounters. The apartments in which he lived in small town Wisconsin. And I don't know about you, but I had some weird stuff happening in my home when I was maybe 8 or 10 years old in Brooklyn, New York. And I'll give you the address. You can look it up. It's on Google Maps and Apple Maps. 102 Newport Street. It's a 4-family brownstone. It is still there. It was built before World War II. Very expensive to move in. We paid $50 a month back in the 50s. Today, it's about $3,000 a month. I assume they've remodeled it. I'm not going to say anymore. They had to have remodeled it to earn that money, but that doesn't work. Anyway, Kurt, let us continue about your weird stuff. Go on.
Like I said, I moved from that apartment to this one, and it's been nothing ever since. It's great. It's quiet. I don't know what was up with that apartment. There's some people that think that whatever the child stuff was, they think that was something attached to my ex-girlfriend. And I don't know why people think that, but it's just that, February, when it was her birthday, is when stuff seemed to happen the most. And the stuff with the kids disappeared after she moved out. But then I don't know where the scratching and the old guy crawling out of the bathroom, I don't know where that came from. Like, I have no idea. There's been times that I wanted to go back and knock on the door and be like, hey, do you have anything weird happening in this place? But apartments are weird, like my dad passed away from a heart attack and I found him in his apartment. And then it's always been in my mind. It's like, do they tell the next people that move in that the previous occupant died? Like, you got to wonder, like, what happened in these apartments?
You never learn the real history, especially if it's in a bigger city, because people leave all the time. Like where I live, it's an apartment complex with over 300 units. So we're talking about what? 1,000, 1,500 people, which is bigger than a lot of towns. And there's always a moving truck. Right now, where I live right now, which is a little over 5 years, every apartment around me, the 3 apartments around me, they've turned over at least 3 times, sometimes 4 times. People go. So if there's a ghost, maybe they take them with you. But going back to your girlfriend, when you hooked up together, is that when you moved into that apartment?
Yes, we specifically moved into that apartment because she was moving up here from Texas.
Ah, okay. And the phenomena started then, and it became a lot less when she left. Did she have anything in her background where things happened to her? Is this something you talked about?
Well, I think we did, but nothing that we could think of. It was always like it started when we moved in there, and the stuff with the kids stopped when she left. But then the other crazy stuff with the getting scratched and the old guy happened a year down the road. So I don't know.
The ghost was mad that your girlfriend left.
It might have been, but it was scratching the heck out of me.
But yeah, the description of this figure, I mean, it reminds me of, say, like a Japanese anime ghost.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And Tim, you know this next part because you and I have talked about this, but one of my good friends, I told her about this, and her theory from day one, she said that whatever that was mocking me, showing me how I was going to die if I continued to like be an introvert and not want to go out to parties and hang out with people and stuff like that. And she said that, and I'm like, no, I'm like, I don't even own the shirt that thing was wearing. And then years down the road, I was at a thrift shop and I was looking at the flannel stuff and I'm like, oh, I like this shirt. So I bought it and then I'm driving home with it and I looked down at it on the seat next to me and all of a sudden I realized that it is the same shirt that thing was wearing. And I'm actually wearing it right now. It's a blue and black checkered flannel shirt. And when I told the students at the school this story, like anytime I would wear this shirt, they would be so mad. They'd be like, Mr. K, do not wear your death shirt to school. So this is technically called my death shirt. But it's weird to me that I did not own whatever shirt that thing was wearing until years down the road when I actually bought it at a thrift shop. What that means, I don't know.
And was this something that you just happened to buy, or did your memory of what happened lead you that way?
I don't know. I love flannel shirts. Anytime I'm in a thrift store, I go to the flannel shirt section because I love cozy flannel shirts, and that's what this was. So I don't know if it was a memory thing. I don't know if it was just the fact that I liked that shirt, then all of a sudden realized it's the same exact thing, whatever that thing was wearing. So I don't know.
Well, he worked for the shirt manufacturer.
Maybe he was modeling it. Maybe he was showing it off. And I'm like, oh, I like the cut of that shirt on this creepy old guy crawling out of my bathroom.
Oh, wow. But after you moved, you've been incident free. Does that mean you'll never get another girlfriend because they'll bring upon all these events?
No, that just means I'm happier living alone. That has nothing to do with the ghost stuff. Like I said, so much of what happened there with the kids was actually kind of like not bad. It was like a happy kid ghost that was leaving Legos lay all over the place. There was nothing like frightening about that to us.
A silly question, because I'm good at silly questions. From the Ministry of Silly Questions, what happened to the Legos?
I still to this day have one of them. The rest we threw out because we would keep throwing them out and the new Legos would keep popping up. I still have one of them. It is if you know what Legos look like, it is a small it's got the 2 dots on it, yellow Lego. It's still here in my apartment somewhere.
And of course, some people always say, oh, you don't keep stuff like that because that just causes the haunting to follow you.
Yeah, no, it hasn't. It was just, I threw it in a drawer somewhere. When I moved my drawers, I just brought it here and it's still here, but nothing is, unless it's down in my storage unit in the basement, and the basement is haunted, but I don't know. But nothing has happened with that. And I don't understand the Lego thing, like ghosts and stuff. But something manifesting a plastic Lego makes absolutely no sense. No explanation for where these things were coming from.
Well, and you know very well that, apports are a common occurrence during hauntings. Yeah. Just all kinds of little things, jewelry, coins. Coins are very popular with ghosts for some reason.
I guess I just thought Legos seemed weird for some reason. Like coins, I understand, but Legos, I just don't get. It's just, but we could never figure out where they were coming from. And then when you couple that with everything else that happened in that apartment, it was just crazy.
Well, somewhere there's a kid who's like, where do my Legos keep going?
Yeah, that's going through some kind of Lego wormhole that ends in our apartment.
Well, it sort of makes me feel I've lived in lots and lots of very dull places. Thank goodness. Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was going to say we had a guest on the show who experienced an extensive haunting in the state of Washington, but he set up like cameras, motion detector cameras, and whatever was going on would steal the cameras, and they would never show up again. He lost hundreds of dollars worth of cameras.
I was going to say that's an expensive ghost.
You see, what happens here is that this was a ghost who moonlighted as a camera thief. And probably he went to some ghostly place, a pawn shop, to sell it for the best he could. I'm kidding. Kurt, Gene, Tim, you're in.
The Paracast?
Hey, truckers, tired of IRP and IFTA filing headaches? Put the brakes on wasted time and money with Auto Tag of America in Arizona, your highway to fast, hassle-free fleet title and registration services. We know the open road is calling, and you've got loads to deliver. Auto Tag of America can help you wave goodbye to costly downtime and delays. This month, truckers save 25% on processing fees. Fuel up on savings at your go-to resource for IRP, IFTA, titles, registration, and renewals at autotagamerica.com/truckers. And keep on trucking without the paperwork drag.
If you struggle to get in shape and lose weight, I'm about to change your life. I'm Carl, the CEO of Body, and I don't like working out and eating healthy either. So here's how I get myself to do it. I make myself own the morning. And by the morning, I mean the first hour or so of every day. It's not family time. It's not for scrolling social media. It's for my results and for my health. And man, does it work. Every day, I get out of bed, drink a health shake, and then I go crush a workout on the Body app and just follow along day by day. Before most people are even out of bed, I'm done for the day. So here's my special introductory offer to you. If you go to body.com to sign up, the next 5,000 new subscribers will get 72% off a full year of access to over 120 programs. Yeah, that's only 33 cents a day to start now and see how fast the pounds come off. And if they don't, you can get your money back, no questions asked. Just go to body.com to save 72% and get life-changing results. That's BODI.com.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Imagine a fence who deals with ghosts who steal cameras and Legos and stuff. That met with silence. Nobody cares.
No, I was trying to picture that.
Well, I just, like the Legos, was there some other haunted house somewhere that motion security cameras kept appearing? And they're like, where are these cameras coming from?
Yeah, I don't know. I just always had a hard time wrapping my mind around Legos appearing out of nowhere.
To recap again, were you big into Legos at all?
No, I never was big into Legos. I never had Lego. I mean, when I was a kid, I had Legos, but I was never into them. So like I said, Natalie wasn't either. So where these came from, I don't know. Some people have jokingly speculated that the ghost hated me and wanted me to step barefoot on the Legos every morning when I got out of bed. I don't know.
Were you bruised and battered by stepping onto those things, or did you avoid them?
We never stepped on one. We just always saw it before, it was always laying on the floor in the bedroom.
I don't want to get into personal things, but after you split up with Natalie, did you remain in touch with her?
Yeah, very much so. To the point where years later, when we got our podcast started and we did an episode where Krista, the other host, and I talked about our personal paranormal experiences, I talked a lot about this apartment stuff. And we had a closed Facebook group, and Natalie joined the group to come in there. And she told everybody, she's like, she said, I can't vouch for the stuff that happened after I moved out. But she said, everything he says that happened when we were living together happened. She said it was all true. So I loved that she came into the group to verify that. But yeah, we're still friends. We still text. So it's all good. And like I said, it always meant a lot to me that she came in there and is like, no, Kurt's not nuts. This stuff genuinely happened to us.
This person that you do a show with, Krista, how did you get connected with her?
So when we were in that ghost hunting group, Krista wanted to be in a ghost hunting group, so she joined. And then a group of us ended up splitting away from the other group, and we started our own group called Heartland Paranormal Investigations. And Krista was with us, and we just became like very, very close friends. And that we went on countless investigations together. We've done so many ghost investigations all over in the Midwest. And Krista worked with two guys named Jeff and Joe that were like kind of audio guys. And they always did a podcast called Friday Nights with Jeff and Joe, where they would just talk about whatever they felt like talking about. One of their dads owned the property that an abandoned elementary school is on in Batavia, Wisconsin. That is small town Wisconsin. It is a very tiny town in the middle of nowhere. But they had this abandoned elementary school, and they would go there and they would record their podcast. And then they were talking to Krista at work, and they were really interested in Krista's ghost hunting experiences and her thoughts on the paranormal. So the three of them started a podcast called Paranormal Palaver, where they would talk about different paranormal ghostly topics. And at one point, they had me come on the show as a guest. Krista couldn't make it, so it was just me, Jeff, and Joe. We talked about ghosts, about our experiences on ghost investigations and stuff. And after that came out, they told Krista, they're like, you and Kurt should do a podcast. So then Krista and I started doing our podcast called The Strange Sessions in 2017 at the old school. And that's kind of how that came to be.
So how do you organize the show? Do you bring on guests or just talk amongst yourselves?
We basically just talk amongst ourselves. It's like a different topic. We record every 2 weeks. If it's a different topic every week. And we started doing it, at the old school, and it was called, our company was called Old School Productions. But our first topic that we did was about the blue whale, which is this weird conspiracy theory involving this game that supposedly makes people kill themselves. And that was our first episode we did. And, that was followed up by us talking about our investigations we went on, us talking about our paranormal experiences. And when we started this, we legitimately thought it was only going to be family and friends listening to it. We created a closed Facebook group called The Strangers. And, like my brother would listen to it. We release it. My brother would listen to it. And a couple of Krista's friends would listen to it. And after a couple months of doing this, like Krista and I would be messaging each other. She'd be like, do you know this person that joined the group? And I'd say, no, I assumed you knew this person. And it turned out some of our listeners were telling other people about our podcast, and they were listening and they were telling other people. So then all of a sudden we had this influx of people we didn't know. And that freaked us out because we thought it was just going to be like small, just us and our friends. And from there, it just kind of skyrocketed and people started listening. And we've had my brother comes on at least once a season. Sometimes he comes on twice, sometimes 3 times. He picks a story that he wants to talk about, so then he does a story. But we've had friends come on. Krista's husband came on when we did an episode about weird sky noises, like people that hear the trumpets in the sky. Our friends Sophie and Adam came on when we did an episode about Ouija boards, because Sophie has had weird things happen with Ouija board when she was younger. And, we actually, one of our listeners in Wisconsin that we've gotten to know really well joined us over the holidays on an actual ghost investigation. So he came and did a ghost investigation with us, and we liked him so much that he officially joined our ghost hunting group. But it's basically Krista and I, we do a topic each episode. Like our last one was about MK Ultra, because we had talked about that with Brian Young on his podcast, and Tim was there, of course. We talked about that on Transatlantic Ramblings with Brian and Lauren. So that was our last episode. Yeah, so our last episode was MK Ultra, and we touch on all sorts of different topics. One of the biggest compliments we ever get is when we get a new listener and they join our group. And when you join our group, we ask 3 questions, and one of them is, how did you hear about us? And we get people commenting saying that they love the show because it reminds them of the old podcast Thinking Sideways, which was an amazing podcast that ended years ago. And that's kind of what our show was based on. So that's like one of the biggest compliments we get from people is that we touch on all these different topics. You know, of course we do haunted stuff, but I feel like there's only so much haunted stuff you can do. And Krista loves anything to do with Bigfoot. So we do a lot of cryptids. I love any kind of weird story. Like my favorite story that we've done, one that I'm just like utterly obsessed with, is the story of the Betz Sphere. Like I love the story of the Betz Sphere. You know, like I love the offbeat ones, like the Dodelston messages, like where in the 80s, this couple that had an old computer were getting messages on their computer from somebody that lived in the 12th century. Like I love weird stuff like that. So we touch on, you know, we do missing person, like weird missing persons that have a weird angle to them. We like to do anything that's kind of spooky or mysterious.
You mentioned something there about the 80s, about getting something, a message from someone from the 12th century. And I think of the fact that back in the 80s is when I discovered personal computers. This is before we had the Mac. This is before we had the Mac. This is the pre-Mac. And then it was all text-based, and I had to learn a little bit about programming basic, which I promptly forgot when I embraced the Macintosh platform. But then I would, at the office, join up with places like CompuServe and Genie, these text-based bulletin boards. Mm-hmm. And this kind of reminded me of that, but I never received messages from anybody from the 12th century. And maybe since we have a show where I've talked about technology in the past, in our next segment, let me ask you about that. I want to know, what you recall about that story, because that sounds like something weird. We got Kurt and Tim and Gene. You're in
the Paracast.
Hey, truckers, hitting the road but tangled up in registration woes? Auto Tag of America in Arizona has got your back. Our crew lives for the nitty-gritty of IRP, IFTA, title, registration, and renewals, so you don't have to. Auto Tag of America understands the unique needs of truckers and trucking business. No matter if you're driving solo or managing a whole fleet, our experts whip up speedy, customized solutions that keep your wheels turning and business booming. With us handling the paperwork, your focus stays on the long haul ahead. Cut the red tape, dodge those costly standstills, and keep that revenue rolling in. Swing by or click online. It's trucking made simple. Time's money on the road, and we're here to save you both. This month, truckers save 25% on processing fees. So fuel up on savings at your go-to resource for IRP, IFTA, titles, registrations, and renewals at autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers. And remember, with Auto Tag of America, you're always in the driver's seat.
If you struggle to get in shape and lose weight, I'm about to change your life. I'm Carl, the CEO of Body, and I don't like working out and eating healthy either. So here's how I get myself to do it. I make myself own the morning. And by the morning, I mean the first hour or so of every day. It's not family time. It's not for scrolling social media. It's for my results and for my health. And man, does it work. Every day, I get out of bed, drink a health shake, and then I go crush a workout on the Body app and just follow along day by day. Before most people are even out of bed, I'm done for the day. So here's my special introductory offer to you. If you go to body.com to sign up, the next 5,000 new subscribers will get 72% off a full year of access to over 120 programs. Yeah, that's only 33 cents a day to start now and see how fast the pounds come off. And if they don't, you can get your money back, no questions asked. Just go to body.com to save 72% and get life-changing results. That's BODI.com.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
All right, Kurt, Konecny. You mentioned something there about a story involving people with a computer back in the 80s. I assume something like an IBM compatible, for example, where they got in touch with someone from the 12th century. How did that play out?
It's a fascinating story. It happened to a man named Ken Webster. His girlfriend's name was, I believe, Deb. They wrote a book about it called The Vertical Plane. And for the longest time, you could not get a copy of it, but they just did another edition of the book, and you can get a copy of the book now. And it's just a fascinating story. He was a teacher, and he used to bring home. They were in England, so it was an old English computer.
It was a BBC computer.
Yes, it was a BBC computer, and this was when they didn't have a modem. Modems weren't a thing, so it wasn't connected to anything. But they would leave the room and leave the computer on, and they'd come back, and there would be some old English writing on it. And it's too much to go into, but it's a fascinating story. And Deb Oakes has a Facebook group about it, and I'm in that group, and it's amazing seeing people in the group that are so into this story and trying to figure out for sure who this guy was. They think they know who this guy was in the 12th century, and he supposedly wrote a book about what happened, about the whole situation, and people are hunting for this hidden book that he supposedly wrote about talking to these people in the future. And it's just, there were just so many weird things. The guy Ken left a picture of his, was it a Camaro? Or it was a Mustang. He left a picture of his Mustang car taped up by the computer. And then he came in and the picture was gone. And the person from the 12th century was writing something about his horseless carriage. And then the picture showed up again, but it looked like it had burn marks on it or something from the Back to the Future movies when time changes something. It's just a fascinating story. So many people call BS on it, but I don't know. It's a really interesting story. It goes along with stuff like John Teeter, who was the supposed time traveler. We did an episode about him, and stuff like that is just utterly fascinating.
I should point out that the Dawson Mystery is featured in our new book, Weird Time.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Cool.
As well as John Teeter, and it's all about time. Them.
I was stumped trying to come up with a time-related topic, but then I came up with 1111s and synchronicity because I'm fascinated with synchronicity.
Yes, let's focus a little bit on synchronicity for this segment. And by the way, of course, Kurt will be back with the After the Paracast podcast, so whatever we can't cover here, we will endeavor to cover there. Tell me, my friend, synchronicity. I think we could say that Shakespearean. Synchronicity. We boldly go where no one has gone before with synchronicity.
No, synchronicity is fascinating. It's when two things, when something happens, like a coincidence that happens that really shouldn't happen, and one of the most prevalent ones, and one which used to happen to me like crazy, and it comes and goes, is the numbers 1111. That is a huge, huge thing with people, is seeing the number 1111 everywhere. And then that is supposed to mean something. It's an angelic number or something, or somebody trying to get your attention. But back in the early 2010s, I want to say 2010, 2011, and a lot in 2012, which was when all the hullabaloo was going on about how the world was going to end, I was seeing 1111s like crazy. Like every day I would see 1111 on the clock. I would go somewhere, buy stuff. It would come up to the total 1111. And I was seeing it everywhere. And the weirdest time, I was at Papa Murphy's in Two Rivers, which is a take and bake pizza place that some people might know. I ordered a pizza, and I'm standing at the glass counter watching the girl make my pizza. And it felt like somebody took their hands, put them on the side of my head, turned my head sideways. So I was facing the cash register, and on the cash register, and behind the cash register on the wall was a clock, and it said 1111. And it just happened all the time. And to this day, I'll go for months without seeing it. Then all of a sudden I will be hammered on by 1111s.
And you wrote a chapter about this.
I wrote a chapter.
Some of your personal experiences.
Yeah. Like the synchronicity stuff is so weird. And what's weird to me is that listeners to our podcast, we did an episode about synchronicities, and we talk about them quite a lot on the podcast. A lot of them said that they have never had synchronicities happen in their life until they listened to our podcast, and now it happens to them like crazy. You know, it's not always 11:11. A lot of times it's stuff like this happens to me a lot when I'm doing research for the podcast in the morning. A lot of times I'm typing something on my computer the same time the person on the TV says the word. That happened not too long ago where I was typing the word cosmic, talking about cosmic rays or something. And as I'm typing the word cosmic, the weatherman on TV says the word cosmic at the same time I'm typing it. And to me, that's so weird. And I had a really weird one 2 weeks ago that just floored me, where I was out for a walk in the woods on the trail here, and I was listening to a podcast, and one of my all-time favorite comfort shows is the old WB show Felicity, the late 90s, early 2000s. I love the show Felicity. This came out with a 25th anniversary podcast where they're talking to the cast and stuff. And I'm out in the woods listening to this, and one of the hosts of the podcast is an actor named Greg Grunberg, who has done some stuff. He was in Star Wars. He's like best friends with J.J. Abrams. So anytime J.J. Abrams does something, Greg Grunberg is going to have a cameo in it at some point. And
right. Felicity, by the way, wasn't that a show before Alias, where Jennifer Garner was in that too?
Yes, Jennifer Garner showed up for like a season. She was Noel's girlfriend, so she was on there. And Greg Grunberg was a character on the show. He was Sean. He was one of the characters on the show that I really liked, and he was one of the co-hosts for this podcast that just came out, looking back at Felicity. And I'm listening to that. So I get done with my walk, and I'm in my car, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking about the podcast, and I'm like, you know, I have a hugging bucket list for people that I want to hug before I die. Like people like celebrities that I just love that I want to hug. And I'm driving home and I'm thinking, one of the only guys on my hugging bucket list is Greg Grunberg. Like, I just want to give him a hug. And I don't know, should I say that on his Facebook? Would that be weird? And I'm driving home thinking about that. And then I get in my apartment, I take a shower, and then I get out of the shower and I go sit down on the couch and I turn on the TV, and my TV's on a channel that's showing the game show 25 Words or Less. So I watch it, and then they go to the contestants, and the first contestant they go to is Greg Grunberg, and then he starts talking about bucket lists. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what are the odds of that I was literally just thinking of that? So it's a lot of that kind of stuff, like that kind of synchronicity I'm just fascinated with.
I'm just interested here in how the connection with Greg Grunberg, of all the people on the planet, you know, this journeyman character actor who's been in lots of shows. Suddenly you think about it. Wait a minute. Okay. Synchronicity involving him, of all people.
Yeah. He's not even that well known of an actor. So the odds, it would have been weird. Yeah. If it would have just been him on the show. But then when he comes on and starts talking about bucket lists, when I was just thinking about him in association with bucket lists, it's so weird. And then we have listeners that write to us on our Facebook page telling us about the weird synchronicities they have.
Before we split this segment, let me hit one more thing about Greg Grunberg. He appeared in Lego Star Wars. Oh boy. Kurt, Gene, Tim, you're in
the Paracast.
Save big on brunch for mom, all in the Fry's app. Get 2-pound packages of juicy, fresh, 93% lean ground beef for $3.97 a pound. Then buy 2, get 2 free on 12 to 15 packs of delicious Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or 7-Up, all with your card. Shop these deals at your local Fry's, less than 5 miles away. Or click the screen now to download the Fry's app to save big today. Fry's, fresh for everyone. Prices and product availability subject to change. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Is managing your trucking fleet's IRP and IFTA transactions costing you too much time and money? Let our team at Auto Tag of America in Arizona help. We specialize in rapid, hassle-free fleet IRP and IFTA services and offer customized solutions for all. At Auto Tag of America, our industry experts will help you say goodbye to lost revenue days due to registration hiccups and ensure smooth sailing for your fleet's operations. This month, save 25% off on processing fees by going to autotagamerica.com/truckers.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Greg Grunberg, Lego Star Wars. That is probably the production I least ever want to see.
But it's neat that there's a tie-in with the Legos, too, that were appearing in my old apartment.
There's a synchronicity right there.
It's all interconnected.
You know what happened here? Greg Grunberg, he's going to sue us, folks. Greg Grunberg has these paranormal powers that he got from the Force. And as a result of which, he sent you those Legos to totally freak you out. No, he didn't, because he did those productions in 2016 and 2022. But speaking of synchronicity, he appeared in a video game called Time Shift. Time.
I didn't know that. He seems like such a good dude.
He seems like a pleasant sort. Of course, you never know. But
yeah,
he generally plays pleasant sorts of people. But you think, well, maybe he gets out his aggressions in private life. We never know.
No, I don't want to think that. I think he's cool. He's still on my hugging bucket list.
Okay, I don't want to get into that because Mrs. Grunberg might object. There is a Mrs. Grunberg, by the way. There is. And she's not listening to the show, I don't think. Her name is Elizabeth Dawn Wershow. That was her maiden name. And they've been married. Wow. They've been married 32 years.
Wow.
How they did that, I have no idea.
But yeah, synchronicities we love talking about on the show. That's one of our go-to topics that everybody loves talking about. And the podcast, it just floors Krista and I. We have never promoted the podcast. We don't tell people like, subscribe. We just don't promote it. And what floors us is people that find it. We moved to a new platform to host the podcast, Podbean. We moved to Podbean 2 years ago. And 2 years from when we moved there, we are just a little bit shy of 300,000 downloads. And Krista and I literally try not to think about that because it freaks us out when we think about that many people listening to the podcast.
You know, with the Paracast, I'm not going to drop figures on you because some of those are proprietary. We've been available in like 3-4 different places. So as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, etc., from the GCN network as a podcast, from the GCN network as on demand, from the GCN network on radio stations. And since GCN is folding, we're actually going to be on some of those radio stations. They've contacted me directly, and they want us to stay. But what's funny here is I monitor our downloads, our traffic, on something called Cloudflare, which is one of these services that protects sites against attacks. It's like an intermediary kind of place, almost like a proxy. And I'm looking at our downloads. In the last hour, our downloads are up 4 times what they were 2-3 hours ago, suddenly. Normally we get that when the show is first streamed, so people are interested, they subscribe. But suddenly that number went up, and I have no idea why. I'm happy it did, but weird things are definitely going on.
Yeah, it's weird because it breaks ours down by like countries, like where we're listened to, and then there's some countries where we have like a big listenership and we don't know why, you know. But again, we try not to look at that stuff because, I mean, we're just a rinky-dink podcast, and when we think about that many people listening to us, it freaks us out. Like, it does kind of freak us out. But that's at the same time, we get email from listeners that just, we get emails from listeners saying that they're in the hospital with a dying parent, and listening to us was the only thing that got them through it. And we had a listener that's in a different country that said he built his own house while listening to us, and he remembers what episode he was listening to in every room of his house. And almost weekly, we get email from people saying that we've helped them get through some really hard times. And that just humbles us to being like, wow, like we did this because Krista and I are both genuinely interested in this stuff, but to know that we're making a difference in people's lives is so amazing. And it gets us teary when we read some of those emails from people. And a lot of people say they like the podcast because they're really into the creepy stuff, and they like us because we don't make it really creepy.
And you're not creeps. You're nice people.
No.
But seriously speaking, though, the point I like about any of these shows, any other person or business, we have a few that we think just don't do the right thing. They pander to their listeners. And we talk, of course, about a certain all-night radio show on iHeartRadio, which we're not going to mention that place because it's being held on no, we don't want to say that word. So we'll just call it two, the word two. It's 3 words, and 2 is the middle word. But anyway, now they're going to sue us. We would like the publicity. Go ahead and sue us. But we enjoy the success of people. I don't consider people rivals. We've had people who are on competing shows, but we don't compete because it's not like television where you have 3 shows and they're all at 9 o'clock and you have to make a decision or record one of them, which you can do now. And I think that's a very big difference in the way markets work. Listen to as many shows as you want. And we discovered things with the Paracast we didn't realize until GCN announced they were going out of business and goes in the trades like Talkers Magazine. And suddenly I'm hearing from other networks, listeners, people like that. And I learned the other day, and I didn't know this because I'm probably stupid and don't look around just to see my name in print, that Amazon Music has the show. There are 4,800 separate reviews for the Paracast, and we get 4.5 stars. And I couldn't believe it. How many? Wow, this is just one service. And if you have 4,800 people who have commented, how many people listen and never comment? We never know what's going to happen with that. So it is certainly a revelation. But from synchronicity, Kurt, anything else you want to give? Because I also want to talk to you about time.
No, synchronicity, I can't think of any. There's another fascinating thing that I really am interested in about synchronicity, and I talk about this in Tim's book, is something called randonauting. Randonauting. It's called randonauting. Rando and then nodding.
I knew them well. They visited me yesterday. Okay, what is it about? What does it mean?
Sounds like a legal firm. But no, it's called randonauting. It basically means random traveling. And what this came out a couple years ago. It's an app for your phone called Randonautica. And what it does is these guys created this. And what this does, it's supposed to enhance synchronicities. And how it does this is I would open the app and it would show me a map of like a Google map version of where I am. And then I say what area I want to do this in. So I generally pick my entire town. I generally pick the entire town of Manitowoc. And then it says you're supposed to come up with an intent. So this is where you're thinking of what you want to get out of this. There's stories of people that say money. I'll tell you 2 different examples I had that were interesting, but I sometimes don't come up with an intent. But what it does is it sends your location supposedly to a quantum computer, and the quantum computer starts spitting out purely random numbers and turns it into coordinates, latitude, longitude coordinates in your area. And it does this for a little bit, and then it stops and it looks at the area that got the most random hits. and it circles that area on your map, the coordinates on your map where that area is. And you're supposed to go to that area, and something significant is supposed to stand out or happen to you.
You know what's going to happen to us? What's going to happen to us is we'll do a station break. That's going to happen with Gene, Tim, Kurt. You're in
the Paracast.
Hey, truckers, hitting the road but tangled up in registration woes? Auto Tag of America in Arizona has got your back. Our crew lives for the nitty-gritty of IRP, IFTA, title, registration, and renewals, so you don't have to. Auto Tag of America understands the unique needs of truckers and trucking business. No matter if you're driving solo or managing a whole fleet, our experts whip up speedy, customized solutions that keep your wheels turning and business booming. With us handling the paperwork, your focus stays on the long haul ahead. Cut the red tape, dodge those costly standstills, and keep that revenue rolling in. Swing by or click online. It's trucking made simple. Time's money on the road, and we're here to save you both. This month, truckers save 25% on processing fees. So fuel up on savings at your go-to resource for IRP, IFTA, titles, registrations, and renewals at autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers. And remember, with Auto Tag of America, you're always in the driver's seat.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fry's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Fry's worth it every time. Fry's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hi, this is Tracy Torme, screenwriter, producer. You're listening to Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
And you'll notice the time differential is less now because we have fewer ads on the main version of the show. That's one thing about terrestrial radio, of course, as we all know. Same thing with commercial TV. Why fast-forward buttons on DVRs are so popular is they run 4 minutes of commercials. And the problem I have with that, and of course we experienced that for a number of years with GCN, the problem I have with that is I'm listening to a show. I don't mind a couple of minutes break. Doesn't matter. But after 3 or 4 minutes, okay, let me hear the show. I know it used to be that way if you listen to commercial radio disc jockeys, where they have ads after every record, as I remember, listening to all these famous stations, AM radio stations, WABC in New York back in the 50s and 60s, WLS Chicago. So I hear the latest song from Elvis Presley and later from the Beatles, and then the disc jockey talks a couple of minutes. Then he plays 3 minutes of commercials. And by the time he gets back to the music, you forgot what you were listening to. All right, tell us more about your time and about this thing that you're...
That's randonauting.
Yeah. They came to me yesterday with a lawsuit.
It uses random digits to pinpoint locations in your town, and then it takes the place that got the most random hits, and you're supposed to go to it. And the theory behind this is that we all go through these paths in our life and don't really change what we do. And this is bringing you to a place that you otherwise would have had no business going to that day. So they're saying that because of this and because of all the random stuff happening in this spot, there's something significant there. And there's stories online. You can find stories about people who did this and it brought them to a dead body, and people that did this and it brought them to a bunch of money out in the woods that they had no idea what it was. And it's weird, but granted, a lot of times I did it. It brought me to like a corner of a farmer's field where there was absolutely nothing. But it's just really interesting to do. And the 2 times that I was like stunned, there was 3. Actually, the first time I went out, I don't remember what my intention was, but it brought me to somebody's driveway. So I walk on the sidewalk to their driveway, and I'm like, what am I supposed to see? And they had a personalized license plate on the car in the driveway that correlated to what my intention was. And I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. But the 2 times that were really interesting, one time my intention was for it to bring me someplace that is important to me. So I did it. I looked at the map. It could not have hit it any better. It had every inch of Manitowoc to go to, and it put me directly on my brother's house's front door. And that just floored me, that it put me on my brother's house. And the one other time that I thought it was really interesting is my intention was for it to bring me somewhere where I would see something magical. And I did it, and it brought me to this park in Manitowoc that a lot of people don't know is there because it's tucked behind a bunch of houses. So it brought me to this park, and then it brought me specifically to the corner of a park where there was a tree there. So I walked into the park, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, there's nothing here but a tree. So I'm just about to start walking away when 8 monarch butterflies flew out of the tree, and then they swooped down around my head a couple times, and then they flew off and went away. And I just thought that was I was like, wow, I guess that was kind of magical. So it's a really fascinating thing, like randonauting, like look it up. A lot of people do it. And again, it's not going to always bring you somewhere where you're going to have some revelation or something cool is going to happen. But when that does happen, it's really fascinating.
There was a case somewhere out on the West Coast, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Kurt. A bunch of kids, young adults actually, who were using that. And I don't remember what the intent was, but it led them to like a beach where they found a suitcase that had a body in it.
Yes.
And that suitcase was exactly where they were indicated to go.
Yeah. Like I said, when something happens doing it, it's one of those moments that you're like, wow, that's crazy. So it's got to tie in with synchronicity. And it's a really, I don't know if I'd say it's a hobby, but it's a really interesting thing to do. Yeah, randonauting.
I've downloaded the app at least twice and have never used it. It's hard for me to find the time.
It's just sometimes
to do that.
Sometimes it puts you right on somebody's house, and it's like, what am I supposed to do? Go into their house and be like, no, the app brought me here. So a lot of times it'll bring you someplace that you can't even get to, but every now and then it does bring you someplace where you're kind of like floored at what happens.
I could just imagine going to somebody's house, a total stranger, and they open the door and they say, hello, can I help you? And you say, well, I have this app on my iPhone, and it said I should come here.
Pretty sure they would call the police.
Then you'd hear the words of the song, "They're coming to take me away, ha ha."
Exactly.
No, it'd be my luck. They'd be like, "No, come in."
Yeah.
And then some guy with a Hungarian accent would say, "The blood is the life, Mr. Swartz."
Come in, we've been expecting you.
Listen to them children of the night. What music they make, especially the Beatles. He didn't say that. No, he didn't say that.
No, but this app, I mean, it's a perfect example of how synchronicity works. And it's also kind of the frustrating part of a lot of synchronicity is that you look for a meaning to it and it avoids any kind of meaning. And that's the way our brain works. Our brain's constantly looking for connections and meaning, and synchronicity is just like, well, there is no meaning, deal with it.
Yeah, basically. Like a lot of people have asked me what I think my 1111s are about, and I'm like, I don't have the foggiest idea. A lot of people say it's a sign you're on the right path, and I'm like, great, I've been on the right path since like 2010 or 11. When am I going to get something rewarding on this path? Like, what is it showing me? What am I supposed to see? Like, it's frustrating.
Well, I have a lot of the of course, say like my wife and I are having a conversation, and one of us will say a word, and at the exact same time, somebody on television says the same word. We've even had it where a phrase, the exact same phrase that one of us is saying, is repeated almost word for word at the exact same time. And that's one where it's just like, okay, what's the meaning of that?
Yeah, and it's so weird because for that one little moment, it's like reality just kind of like wiggles and you're just like, wow, what's going on?
I run into that occasionally where I'm watching a TV show and I predict what the next line of dialogue is, but my theory, which has nothing to do with anybody else's theory, is that, number one, I learned a little bit about script writing years ago, and you're watching these shows, and there are cliche lines that on certain things like police procedurals, like Law and Order, FBI, etc., there are certain lines that will be repeated all the time. So it's quite often easy to predict it or expect it. Not that it's due to any kind of weird synchronistic phenomenon. It is, okay, pop culture is what it is. We are immersed in it. And at some point, it's so familiar that you know what's going to happen. It's like the scenes where you see in like an NCIS or a Law and Order, where from about 30 feet away, they say, police, stop. And you think, wait a minute, that person will run away and there's a chase scene. But in the real world of police work, you don't tell them when you're 30 feet away. You walk up to them and then you introduce yourself so they can't run away. But of course, that doesn't look good on TV. And even the people who do these shows understand it doesn't look good on TV, but having 3 or 4 minutes of people running and jumping and showing their acrobatic skills makes for better visual experiences. You wouldn't do it on radio, the theater of the mind. We have Kurt, we have Tim, we have Gene. You're in
the Paracast.
Is managing your trucking fleet's IRP and IFTA transactions costing you too much time and money? Let our team at Auto Tag of America in Arizona help. We specialize in rapid, hassle-free fleet IRP and IFTA services and offer customized solutions for all. At Auto Tag of America, our industry experts will help you say goodbye to lost revenue days due to registration hiccups and ensure smooth sailing for your fleet's operations. This month, save 25% off on processing fees by going to autotagamerica.com/truckers.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fry's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Fry's worth it every time. Fry's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hey, this is Marie D. Jones, the author of This Book is from the Future, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Just to let our listeners know, this will be the final segment of our main show with Kurt Konecny. I think I did his name right because I know
you did it perfect.
The hand's not going to come out of the screen then. And of course, I have a feature here. It's called Web Redirect. So if you do it, I'll send it over to Tim.
Okay.
Pray tell, let us continue. You've been on ghost hunts.
Yes, several of them.
Tell us about a couple of them.
Our favorite place that we investigated, it is not open anymore. In the town of Stoughton, Wisconsin, which is near Madison, there used to be a place there called Elsing's Secondhand Shop. That was like a secondhand shop. And they were having stuff happen. So they were having ghost groups come in, and we contacted them about coming in. We got to actually be like really good friends with Vicky and Phil to the point where we must have done over a dozen investigations there. I spent 2 investigations by myself in the building. It was an amazing place. Like something happened every time we were there. I mean, that place was flat out haunted. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The place was haunted. And it was just such an amazing place. And we're just sad that it's not there anymore. But we had stuff happen. We spent the night there several times. Krista, one investigation, was laying upstairs on the floor trying to go to bed, and something was breathing in her ear. We've caught several EVPs there. There's supposedly the ghost of a little girl in the building, and we caught the giggle of a little girl on our audio. And there was a father and his son were in the building, and they were down in the book room where the ghost of the little girl has been seen. And the dad's looking at books, and all of a sudden the kid goes, "Who was that little girl?" And the dad said, "Which little girl?" And he said, "A little girl just walked in here and walked right to the wall." So we just had stuff happen there all the time. It was crazy. I went there with my friend Aaron, who kind of believes this stuff, but kind of doesn't at the same time. And we went in, and Vicky wanted to bring me to the back of the shop to show me where a saw blade had flown off the wall the week before I was there. So Aaron sat down on a chair by the register, and he was reading a magazine while she brought me to the back of the shop. And Vicky had security cameras around, so she had the bank of monitors by the register. So as she brought me to the back of the building, I looked at the monitors, showed all the rooms. There was nothing going on. She showed me where the saw blade had come off, and then we walked back up to the front, and Vicky goes, "Aaron, did you shut off the monitors?" And Aaron said, "No, I've been sitting here reading this magazine the whole time." And we looked, and the plug for the monitors had been pulled out of the outlet and set on top of the counter by the cash register. And Aaron was so freaked out because he's like, "Dude, I've been here the whole time. I didn't hear anything. I didn't do that." So he was pretty freaked out after that. And like I said, stuff happened every single time we were in the building. It was just amazing.
Was there anything that you could record for posterity or the next episode?
Like play our EVPs and stuff from Vicky's?
Yeah, anything that you could record, anything you can show to listeners. Hey, this is what happened to us. It isn't just us talking about stuff.
We do have EVPs from there. And we have a lot of our investigation reports about what happened there, but we don't have like a ton of pictures or anything like that. We have just like a handful of EVPs.
That's always unfortunate because ghosts do not like you to have cameras.
Yeah,
it's like UFO abductions, you know. People bring out their cameras, and everybody today, almost everybody has a camera in their pocket. It's an iPhone, it's a Samsung Galaxy, it's a Google or Alphabet or whatever they want to call themselves. Whatever it is, high-quality cameras that make wonderful pictures until you want to check out a UFO abduction, a UFO sighting, a ghost encounter. Then they fail.
Yeah, then it's all blurry. We never had good luck with pictures or video, really. We've always had the best luck with audio recordings. You know, and like I said, we got a handful from Vicky's place that were interesting, but her place was a lot of experiences, but not a lot of hard evidence. There was one day where an investigation where I was sitting on the stairs to the basement. We had the lights off and we were asking questions to the spirits there. And I said, like, if you're here, can you show me that you're here? And then a couple seconds after I said that, it felt like someone came and ran their fingers along the back of my hand on the stairway. And I said that, and a couple minutes later, Rhonda, another one of our investigators, it's sitting in the room in the basement, and she said she felt the same thing, like somebody came and just ran their fingers lightly against the back of her hand. So it was a lot of stuff like that. A few EVPs. For the most part, it was just a lot of personal experiences.
It reminds me of a song from the 60s by a group called Spanky and Our Gang, "Well, I'd Like to Get to Know You." Yes, I would. Anyone remember that song? I thought it was just a beautiful song.
I don't know if I remember that one.
You know, look it up on YouTube. It is a fabulous song. I think they made some of the nicest recordings from the mid-'60s. They were kind of compared and similar to the Mamas and the Papas. But they had a lot more going.
Good music in that era, other than, I mean, everybody knows the Beatles and all that, but there was so much good music in the mid to late 60s.
I'll just give you one thing before we begin to wrap up. There is a guy on YouTube called Professor of Rock. His name is Adam Reeder, and he's the ultimate rock fan, but he also gets the artists on the show. and he interviews them. He's interviewed Brian Wilson, for example. This is before he's become ill lately. Then, of course, Tommy James from Tommy James and the Shondells. By the way, Tommy James, I understand, is interested in UFOs. Dennis DeYoung of Styx, who was a fabulous interviewer. He's a wacky kind of guy. He's like your Chicago neighborhood guy to go out with a pizza. We want to get a pizza, you get Dennis DeYoung. Hey, Dennis, you've got the money. You made all these millions from Styx. Why don't we go out for a pizza and talk about it?
I would love to have pizza with Dennis.
Uh-huh. But yeah, he's a cool guy. Professor of Rock, look it up on YouTube. I've asked him, by the way, to do an episode on shows from famous rock stars, music from famous rock stars about UFOs. Creedence Clearwater Revival did one. Jimi Hendrix Experience. And of course, we know that the Foo Fighters UFO term records on Roswell Records. That's David Grohl and his band. Kind of interesting, isn't that connection? Anyway, Kurt Konecny. Tell our listeners if they want to know more about the things you do, where can they check you out?
You can listen to us. The Strange Sessions is our podcast. We are pretty much everywhere. Spotify, iTunes, every platform you can think of. Look up The Strange Sessions, and that is Krista and I talking about all things strange.
Speaking of strange things, you can find us, if you look for the Paracast, on Threads, on X, and on Facebook. And by the way, if you want to get branded merchandise for the show with 4 different logos to choose from, pay a visit to the Paracast.store. That's the Paracast.store. And we also offer a streaming service. We give you this show, the same show. We cut out those network ads, just like we've always done. And we offer a bonus, the After the Paracast podcast, where you never know what's going to happen next. It's a straight-ahead show with no interruptions, no ads, and we go on, and the language, shall we say, can be a little more frank. And we've had people named Frank on the show, too, but the language might be a little more aggressive, and we get into things that you'd never believe we could do. If you want to know more, go to theparacast.plus, theparacast.plus. Sign up. You can join in just a few seconds and be ready to listen to the stuff you can't get for free. Kurt Konecny, glad to meet you. Thank you very much for joining us on the Paracast.
Gene, it was great meeting you too. Thank you for having me on. Tim, always love talking with Tim. We've been around the block together a couple times with podcasts. Tim's an amazing guy. Gene, it was awesome meeting you, and just thank you for having me on.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.
Hey truckers, hitting the road but tangled up in registration woes? Auto Tag of America in Arizona has got your back. Our crew lives for the nitty-gritty of IRP, IFTA, title, registration, and renewals, so you don't have to. Auto Tag of America understands the unique needs of truckers and trucking business. No matter if you're driving solo or managing a whole fleet, our experts whip up speedy, customized solutions that keep your wheels turning and business booming. With us handling the paperwork, your focus stays on the long haul ahead. Cut the red tape, dodge those costly standstills, and keep that revenue rolling in. Swing by or click online. It's trucking made simple. Time's money on the road, and we're here to save you both. This month, truckers save 25% on processing fees. So fuel up on savings at your go-to resource for IRP, IFTA, titles, registrations, and renewals at autotagamerica.com/truckers. That's autotagamerica.com/truckers. And remember, with Auto Tag of America, you're always in the driver's seat.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fry's. where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Fry's worth it every time. Fry's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.